Okay, hi everyone, welcome to ChainVibes by CCACC. Thank you for inviting me. And today I'm going to talk about GameFi and AI in blockchain. So I've created this slides with AI itself, Gemini, and you can see has created a avatar of me. So that's what's so great about artificial intelligence right now, and it enables us to do a lot of work that we manually had to do before, now automatically. And this, when combined with blockchain, allows us to get to the next level of GameFi, which I call GameFi 3.0. So let's talk a bit about my origin first. I've created over 30 plus games. I've worked on over 30 plus games. I'm sure some of you would know Scribblenauts, published by Warner Brothers. I've also worked on Drawn to Life by THQ, and of course I've worked on my own Alpha Kimori RPG, which is a role-playing game. From my experience doing all these games, and the reason why I came to Web3 is because I've always wanted to be on the forefront of tech, and of course the forefront of people technology. And it's not just about artificial intelligence, but the fact that as humans, we want to always try our best to do our best. And I feel that Web3 provides that, but unfortunately, the first wave of Web3 has been a lot about finance, right? It's about people coming in just to make money. So I'm going to show you guys what the flaw is and the crash of GameFi 1.0. So I've worked on GameFi 1.0 on Soulborn game, and that was the first 3D game that I've worked on. It was showcased in PJ Pack One Utama Theater. It was really well done, but I think what I've learned from it is that you can't just create a game for the fact of tokenization, right? If you put tokenization as your main focus when you create a game, it is very finance-based. And when it's very finance-based, the players come in just to make money and sort of like a pyramid scheme. Okay, let's see here. I've actually created three segments of the evolution of games in GameFi. So first segment is like V1, traditional gaming. That's where I came from. That's more to Web2 gaming. That's more to static code and centralized system. Okay, it's purely fun-driven and it's a closed loop. Nothing wrong with that, right? In fact, that's where we all came from. We played traditional games. For those of you who played games before, I'm sure you played games on Nintendo DS, you played games on PC, you played games on your Game Boy, and that was really fun. Those were the days that that was story driven, right? And then came GameFi 1.0, which is hyper-financialized, and it's more to speculative, yield-driven economy, right? And that's a lot of inflation. So what I mean by inflation is that when the first wave of people come in, they want to make money through these games. So they come in not as players, but as farmers. So they just come in to farm the tokens, hoping that the next wave of people who come in will sort of like fund them. Right? It's a game of musical chairs that just goes round and round. And then it becomes not fun anymore, right? As soon as the token loses its value because less and less people come in, there's always a point or a peak where the game does not attract more people to come in anymore, then the value of the coin drops and then the community disappears. And that's the main problem of GameFi Coin 1.0. And then we skip sort of like to GameFi 3.0 because it goes along with the name of Web3, right? So this is what I'm proposing for version 3 of GameFi. It's going to be very AI dynamic and open Web3 decentralization. It's more to player-based, playable economy and ownership driven. So think of AI integrated with blockchain to prove that you own in-game items, but at the same time you use the AI to help to manage the economy, right? So you can actually think of it like a mirror of the real world. So right now we have artificial intelligence in the real world, and how the artificial intelligence is used in the real world can also be used in the game. So what I mean by used in the game is that if you think of Skynet, which is from the Terminator movie, and it's very like godlike, right? But the thing is, if you think of us living in a simulation, the game is like a simulation. So real life is like a game, but this AI in the game is the one that you can play with, right? You can control that, but you cannot control the AI in real life. So think of it as a sort of a mini real world simulation, and the economy of this mini game, right, or the game itself, can be controlled by the artificial intelligence, and that's what makes it so exciting. Even in the real world today, right, if you look at games in the real world, they are also very commercialized now. It's no more passion driven, I feel. And I think that people have to go back to what makes humans. I think that is a very, very important concept. And it all boils down to the fact that we are people who are here to ask not so much how things work, but why things work or why we are here as human beings. So when we humans ask that question, then it becomes a sort of an existential question of life. So I'll just get back more to the technical aspects first while we talk about the philosophy later. So in GameFi 3.0, let's look at Tales of the Lego, which is one of the games that I work on. If you guys want to test the game, you can reach out to my colleagues over here. They have the game on mobile. You can even download it from talesoftheLego.com. That is a playable game which I helped to co-develop and to actually see the presentation. It's a Telegram mini game as well. Okay, we did Telegram outreach to all the Telegram members. We have planned. I mean, it's a main rhythm game. Okay? It's a music rhythm game using K-pop music, and then we actually plan to have the clan economies, the MMORPG aspects later on, with rewards and tournaments for clan members. So the whole point is to have a closed ecosystem, and yet that's something that I'm proposing later on. Okay, moving on from Tales of the Lego, we'll skip on to the next slide, and that is having a more AI-based game master. Right? In order for that to happen, we need an ecosystem that connects to multiple games, and that's something that I've proposed to CCACC, which is the sponsor of today's event. I proposed to them to actually let us set up an incubator to help a lot of indie game developers come together for an ecosystem that uses a platform, our Web3 platform for GameFi, to enable them to have characters and players that can cross across multiple games. Think of this as the multiverse, just like in the Marvel multiverse. It's mirroring real life in a way. Maybe you can think of it in quantum real sense, right? And I think a lot of people are more aware of this kind of philosophies or concepts of life because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now. So you can think of entertainment sort of driving and motivating us even in the technology field. So let's talk about the tech of it. So what would this game master actually do? It would actually be making the whole generation, right? I mean, that's not very different from the past where we have AI working on whole generation, but the difference here is that we're going to use blockchain. And how are we going to use blockchain? We're going to use smart contracts, those blockchain events. Okay, so let's say you have a character that belongs to a guild. If you guys don't know what a guild is like an organization in the game. Think of it as a mirror of a decentralized autonomous organization or a DAO in the Web3 space. So when you have a guild, you have to manage that guild. Usually we have guild masters. Speaking of which, I have friends who are guild masters that I have brought to Malaysia with me to actually work on games, and they are very good at making games also because they are good at the math of it. But we don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of technical mathematics on how to calculate of let's say how much ore or how much metal or how much wood, how much resources that the guild has to get, and how much rewards that the guild has to give up in order for members or players to join as guild members, right? So we have artificial intelligent NPCs, right? You can think of them as bots who will join the guild, and you can assign them tasks, or the players can assign them tasks. So for example, when you go to a guild hall, you can assign tasks to these NPCs that will go out and collect metal for you. They will go and mine caves to get gold, for example. So they have wallets of their own that is like a on-chain wallet, right? But all this will be transparent. As a player, you won't even know about the wallets. And the problem, again, I'm going to digress a bit. The problem with the GameFi right now is that whenever you want to play games, you have to enter your wallet address, you have to worry about the blockchain, you have to have your seed phrase. You know, you don't want that in GameFi 3.0. You want it to be transparent, you want it to be seamless, so that players can just play the game, enjoy the game, more like World of Warcraft, but you don't see the blockchain aspects in the background of it. So I think that's what's going to make it fun, because you can assign your NPCs, what I call smart NPCs, as you can see in the slides, they will actually go out and be the characters to interact with actual players, or even they can interact with other eco agents, what we call them, the LLM or large language model powered entities that are participating in the game world. And when the players interact with them, it will be something like Ready Player One, if you watch that movie, where we get to interact with humans, other humans, and we also get to interact with artificial intelligence. So it sort of blurs the line between artificial life and human life. But I feel that in order to do so, right, we have to cross that boundary of what is consciousness and what is artificial intelligence. Because if you think of it, artificial intelligence does need some consciousness to evolve into real intelligence. So I'm going to skip to the next slide here, and then we're going to talk a bit about the blockchain use and whether it's overvalued. But I think I'll focus a bit about how blockchain can help us to create an identity online. Again, we start with a true identity, meaning that we don't have to actually reveal who we are, but if we compare a human and an artificial intelligence character, can we actually tell the difference when we are online, right? Because if you watch some of the sci-fi movies right now, some artificial intelligent beings become really like human, right? So if they can carry that identity through the blockchain and represent themselves, sort of like an identity card or something that tells about your what do you call that, your reputation online, right? Then doesn't that make you somebody of worthiness in the online world? So for example, you have been helping your friends as a healer in the game, and people see you in some other game which has a healer as well. So they want you to be part of that party because they know you are a reliable healer and you will not be running away in the midst of battle. Okay, so besides that, we have asset provenance. It just simply proves that certain items can be used by certain maybe people of reputation, right? As I just mentioned, there are people who are maybe very skilled marksmen, very skilled warriors. So they use certain weapons, and those weapons become sort of like a benchmark of what can be used in certain battles that will improve your chances of winning. So those kind of weapons become of more value, and the blockchain helps to preserve that value and to prove to you as a buyer that this is of value, right? Just remember that it's not just about value for the sake of inflation of tokens, right? But it's more to the value of you having something symbolic that some of your heroes might have used. So isn't that like in real life? I think in the Supergirl movie, Supergirl was saying that suit doesn't, it's just a suit. It doesn't make her special. It doesn't give her the superpowers. But when she wears that suit, doesn't that inspire you to have hope, right? And I think that's what makes humans so special, and that's part of my philosophy of life as well. Because when you think about it, all this artificial intelligence is just the how you do things. How do how do you simplify even like in-game quests, right? You can send your artificial intelligence to do the calculations for you. You can use artificial intelligence to go and do the boring tasks of mining. This is like real life, right? You have artificial agents, artificial intelligent agents doing work for you that is going to be boring for humans. But behind it, there is the human origin, right? When I say human origin, it means that humans are the ones who are creative and they provide that inspiration, that story behind why we do the things we do. So when we actually access that human origin, we're able to access that power that lies only with humans, right? Maybe one day artificial intelligence will reach that point, but it requires consciousness. And that scientists have gone around the bush trying to explain consciousness, but it's a very, very difficult concept and complex concept to explain. But we can use the game, right, or game worlds to explain how these work. And it's very exciting to be able to do that with the blockchain and artificial intelligence. So we talk about decentralized coordination. We have the online community, decentralized community, people working together like a government, right, in real life, but it's decentralized. So imagine like I was actually an ambassador for Polkadot, and a lot of the voting was done using, like for the treasury, it was done online with the blockchain. So you get a say as long as you're part of the blockchain. There are rules, of course, and these are all enforced by smart contracts. So they're all very, I would say, transparent, and the fact that you should be able to do it like with people being able to see how everything works. So there's no like hanky-panky behind the scenes stuff, right? So if you are able to simulate that in game, you are able to test it. Because if we test it with something like a real world decentralized organization, sometimes you make the mistakes and you lose a lot of money. But when you simulate that in the game and it works, then you are able to bring that to real life. So I feel that it's very important that humans play, because when we play, we actually reach deep down into our soul, and we are able to get that passion, we are able to get that source, human origination source that motivates and gives us purpose in whatever we do in life. So next, we'll talk a bit about agent wallets. It's a technical term for the wallets that are owned by your artificial intelligence agents. And these agents are just like us humans. We can own Web3 wallets which contain our tokens or even like our armor. So all these are called non-fungible tokens. The non-fungible tokens are like things that are not replicable, they are not similar in the sense that they have special armors, they have special features, we have special weapons. They are not like Bitcoin where you can replicate. It's like not a currency, right? So it can contain both fungible and non-fungible tokens in our wallets, and that is sort of like ownership, right? So when we own something in the virtual world, you can also own something in the real world like property, and then have that twin of that, they call it a digital twin, in the virtual world. So you can see the convergence between the real world and the virtual world, and one day maybe we'll be working in the virtual world and also translate some of what we have in the virtual world to the real world. But the blockchain and artificial intelligence is the medium that connects the virtual world to the real world. Okay, so I'm going to speak a bit about what are the components that needs to make this happen. Okay, one of them is your AI-powered NPCs, right? And having the large language model to interface with these artificial intelligence agents. And how we do that is through the APIs, of course, because we already have large language models out there. So we just need to interface them with the artificial intelligence NPCs or non-playable characters in the game. And then we have the AI guild masters or AI guild managers, which manages all the statistics of the guilds. And then we move on to loyalty passports, which is your blockchain identity. Like I said, it will give us an online reputation, and you can carry that across games. So the problem with the real world right now, especially with game developers, they actually see each other as competitors. They don't want to actually bring your reputation across games, right? Because that will probably make one game not as famous as the others. That's why I'm proposing the incubation or the platform that we will use to help game developers to develop games that they can actually use in a community to help each other. So they are built on the same platform. So people who actually develop games will be able to use it to get different players to play different games, right? Because games it's a numbers game, right? And if you know, like a company like Rovio, they have made over 30 plus games before they succeeded with Angry Birds. So if we find, or if an investor will find games, then it will make sense to find a platform that incubates games with various developers. So one of the games can be successful versus the other games. So I think that even if 1 out of 30 makes it, it will bring back enough of the investors' investments into these games. Okay, next we have the Onchain anti-cheat. Anti-cheat, obviously we don't want to cheat, and the blockchain helps to validate that there's no cheating because everything is stored on the blockchain. We have a historical record of the transactions made by both the players and of course the NPCs and artificial intelligence team up. So we can see what's going on. Everything's transparent, especially with cryptographic verification, and then we have leaderboards that are transparent. Next, we have frictionless Web2 onboarding. I think that's very important because people who play games, they don't want to know about all this technical stuff that we just talked about, right? They just want to play a fun game. That's why I'm saying, play a fun game, have a good story, and that is the core of fun gameplay. We don't want to talk about all the technical stuff. I think that's very important. So we have to focus on building that, focus on building a UI or a user interface, a user experience that is fun for people to play and to actually get into these games. Okay, so I broke this down into three pillars of this concept of three pillars. Okay, number one is the gameplay loop. It has to be fun, right? So that you attract people to actually play the game. And unfortunately, the first phase of GameFi is not fun because people focus on the finance part of GameFi, the GameFi. We want to focus on the game part and not the fi part of the game. Game, that's the gameplay loop. And then pillar two is the longevity of the game. It needs to have a well-balanced economy. It needs to have that engagement. It needs to have not just speculation, but people who actually play the game and come back playing the game, even if the price of the tokens drop. So when the price of the tokens drop, the question is whether the players will still come back to the game's fun. So they're not even looking at the price of the tokens anymore, right? And that leads to pillar number three, which is a loyal community. So when we have a loyal community, then people will keep coming back, and then they'll have fun. They will even be able to mix the game developers, like I mentioned before, we're creating a platform, game developers on it. So the game developers will be able to get a feedback from the community on what they want and then create better games for them. So it creates a very positive feedback. Okay, so this is the final slide that I have, and it's basically just a summary of what I've just said. I'll go through the whole thing again. So number one, GameFi 1.0 errors, I'd say, it's because of speculation, and it is not fun. Okay, so the vision for GameFi 3.0 is an open ecosystem, high quality gameplay, AI, and real ownership. Of course, then in the future there will be quantum computing, but let's keep that for the future. And then we have AI's role in this whole GameFi 3 vision, which means that it personalizes our experience in the game. It helps us to have that provenance of assets. We balance inflation dynamically. Think of it as an artificial intelligence central bank, right? And that's where the blockchain value comes in, because it enables that P2P handling, AI wallet trails. We can see what's going on. We can see the historic transactions. Everything is proven. And then we have AI as players, as traders in the game. That will be linked to your large language models. That will be linked to your artificial intelligence agents. That is all the hype right now. Okay, so exactly as I said, the game mirrors the real world, right? But you get to test everything in a simulated environment in the game first, so that the consequences to the real world is not as bad. So if the real world is a simulation, think of the game as a simulation to a simulation. That is the philosophy behind the game. And of course, we have economic sustainability when we are able to balance the economy, right? When I talk about economy, it's not just the economy of tokens, it's about players as well, right? How do people feel about the game? How do people feel about why we are playing the game? And it's not just what or how it's done, but why we are doing what we are doing. So that will attract gamers, like the traditional gamers from Web 2 to Web 3. And finally, we have some of the mistakes that founders have made. So I've noticed that a lot of founders I've talked to, they try to put everything on the blockchain, including like every frame that is rendered in the game. That makes no sense. Don't do that. Only put the anything that requires the blockchain to be on the blockchain. And then again, this has to be transparent to the player. Even if you want the player to know about the blockchain, only do that after the player is already invested in the game and does want to know about the blockchain. So you don't force anything onto the player, right? This is true for real life as well. Don't force anything on people that they don't want to force on them. That's the philosophy of it. And that's why I've always used my own philosophy, which is Grey Dao, to explain everything I do in life. And that means doing everything to an extent where you try everything. It doesn't mean that you have to put everything, like you don't have to believe in everything, but you have, and believe in everything at the same time to a certain extent, right? and you give everything an opportunity. I think that is a very important aspect, especially when we talk about the future of GameFi. And that is how I'm going to end this presentation. I hope that we can think about how we can make a better future for GameFi and for us as humans, and to simulate real life, the virtual world, and to always be motivated. With that, thank you very much for coming, and see you all. Thank you guys. Bye. Thank you.
Excellent.